So now we're going to get into talking a bit about the Eightfold Path. And this morning, I'm thinking that we're just going to give it a bit of an overview, and then we're going to expand on it later this afternoon. And so the Eightfold Path, let's see, where's this book? This is sort of the foundational comments on the Eightfold Path, which has to do with ignorance. The Buddha teaches there is one defilement which gives rise to all the others, one root which holds them all in place. This root is ignorance. Ignorance is not mere absence of knowledge, a lack of knowing particular pieces of information. Ignorance can coexist with a vast accumulation of itemized knowledge, and in its own way it can be tremendously shrewd and resourceful. At this basic root of dukkha, ignorance is a fundamental darkness shrouding the mind. Sometimes this ignorance operates in a passive manner, merely obscuring correct understanding. At other times it takes on an active role. It becomes the great deceiver, conjuring up a mass of distorted perceptions and conceptions which the mind grasps as attributes of the world, unaware they are its own deluded constructs. What the hell does that mean? Well, for one, you want to relate it to what we're all familiar with. That speaks to my drinking and drug use completely. I was ignorant of the real story of what was going on in my life. And by the nature of it, I was ignorant of my ignorance. I was not aware that I was deceiving myself. And my view is that recovery via the 12 steps and the 12 traditions and all the things that we talk about in the rooms and living on the Buddhist path are an ongoing effort to reduce the ignorance in my life and to deepen and broaden my sense of what actually is going on versus the story that I always told myself. And so now the Buddhists say, okay, how do you go about that? And the foundational teaching is that you live the Eightfold Path. Just like the 12 steppers have, the foundational teaching is the steps and the traditions. And just like in AA, we can go beyond that. We can have everybody's different version and different pieces that people pick up. As you go on in the Buddhist teachings, there's all sorts of additional very important knowledge that comes, but where we start is with the Eightfold Path. And there's at least a few people in the room that aren't familiar with it. So, and let me put in a caveat that the translations for the correct way of terming the Eightfold Path do vary from school to school and from translator to translator. So if somebody says right intention and somebody else says right thought, don't worry about it. Over time you'll get to notice that they're basically equivalent for our purposes, and you'll come up with the 8 that work for you versus anything that I particularly tell you. So the first 2 of the 8 are the wisdom, I guess I would call steps. The first of the Eightfold Path is called right view. And right view has to do with seeing things as they are, and most foundationally it has to do with coming to understand the accuracy and the truth of the Four Noble Truths. So that would be the starting point, and it'd be very equivalent to getting the first step. If you don't get the first step in AA, the rest of the steps don't work as well. Sometimes, though, you have to do the rest of the steps in AA to get the first step. And one thing about the Noble Eightfold Path is it is not sequential. At any given time, if you think of the Eightfold Path being the perimeter of a wheel, there's always interactions between the first of the 8 and the 8th of the 8th and the 4th. So we're always working in an interconnected way on the Eightfold Path. So the first one is right view. The second is the second of the wisdom pieces, and that's right intention or right thought. And well, I think I'm going to wait to read various parts about them until this afternoon. The third, fourth, and fifth of the Eightfold Path are the ethical or moral principles. And the first one is right speech. The second one is right action. And the third one is right livelihood. So those are the ethical or moral foundation of Buddhist teachings. And I will delineate these this afternoon. And finally, the last three are regarded as the meditation training or concentration trainings. And they are described as right or appropriate effort, right or appropriate mindfulness, and right or appropriate concentration. All three are essential. In really simple terms, the way I think about this concentration piece is with meditation. We've all meditated now 2 or 3 times in less than 24 hours. And it'll be pretty soon when most of the people in this room will be reasonably competent meditators. Unfortunately, it doesn't do a damn bit of good unless you keep meditating. And so there's the mindfulness piece that one gets from meditation, but it's essential to have the right effort and the right concentration for you really to get anywhere with it, for it really to lead you further along the path. And so what we're trying to do with these teachings is again, it's in my view, it's equivalent to practicing a program of recovery. There's a whole lot of people that come into AA, they come in with a lot of enthusiasm, they stop drinking, their life starts getting better, and they sort of drift away from any organized or concerted effort at maintaining a sober connection in the world. And I mean, that's okay as far as it goes, as far as if that's what they want. But quite honestly, they're not getting the benefits, they're not getting the good stuff. Because if you don't continue to practice it, the good stuff diminishes. I often, when I think about this, I think about a person who wants to be in shape, or maybe a marathon runner. You know, you get off the couch, and you've been a couch potato for years, and you decide you're going to become a marathon runner, you watch the Olympics or something, and if you get up off the couch and you try and run 26 miles, you're going to hurt yourself. And you're not likely to run again the next day. But if you get up off the couch and you start walking and you get a book on how to run, and you get the right sneakers, and maybe you get a coach, and you start eating right, and you start sleeping right, and you get a schedule for becoming a long distance runner, there's a pretty decent possibility that you can become a long distance runner. So let's say that you've done all those things. You have the coach, I guess that would be the equivalent of your sponsor or your teacher. You're doing literally the steps. You know, you're walking, you're jogging. It's not too long before you go from being able to run a mile to being able to run a few miles. First time you run a mile, it's exhausting. But it's not too long before you can run 5 miles, and the first mile is just a warm-up. And 5 miles is exhausting. Then you can run 10, and 5 miles is just a warm-up. It's a nice progression. So you get all the way to being a marathon runner, and you complete your first marathon. You are officially a marathon runner. Now you go back and sit on the couch for 5 years. Stop running. You still know how to be a marathon runner, but you're no longer a marathon runner. And that's with this thing that we're talking about here, whether you're talking the steps or whether you're talking Buddhist teachings, it's the same thing. It's first you learn it and you do it and you practice this, and there's a lot of growth. And then I think, very reasonably, the growth isn't as dramatic, but it's still there. And we have to maintain it. There has to be an ongoing practice or we lose it. Now there's one other, I think, really important thing here with this running metaphor that I like, is that as you're becoming a marathon runner, there's two ways you can approach it emotionally. And my preferred way in an earlier time in my life was, I got to run, I got to go jogging, I got to go running. God, I got to do it, but I want to do this. I want to do the New York Marathon. I'm going to do it. And you hate every damn day of your working out because you know there's a payoff coming. I am going to cross that finish line. I am going to be happy. I'm going to get that new job. I'm going to get the diploma. I'm going to get the this or the that. And so your happiness is in the future, and it's conditional on some sort of achievement. If you do that, you're going to be pretty miserable most of the time. If you're lucky and you're not too exhausted, you're going to have about 5 or 10 minutes of real happiness when you finish the marathon. There's a very good chance you could be in such pain, though, you don't notice. The other way you can do it is say, I'm going to become a marathon runner and I'm going to enjoy every damn day. I am going to figure out a way to feel pleased that I can now walk a couple miles, that I can jog a couple miles, that I can run. And that's what really we're after in the program of recovery and in Buddhist teachings, is to be comfortable where we are and keep proceeding along the path. So that's how I conceptualize basically overall what we're doing here. I wanted to talk about the fourth and the fifth step in this context, because the fourth and the fifth step for me really led to a lot of growth and a lot of new awareness that I didn't have previously. I did my first, what I was called the fourth and the fifth step, in rehab. I think more accurately, it was probably a written first step that they made us get up and stand there and tell everybody about. But it functioned as a fourth and a fifth step for me because, as it turns out, I walked into a rehab, I had a lot of shame and guilt for a lot of things that I had done. And when I talked about these things that I had done, and I was not rejected by people, a lot of shame and guilt diminished. It dissipated. It went away. And that was very important to me. So I wrote up this stuff. I spoke about it. I felt better. After I got into AA, and actually I was about a year sober when I moved to Ithaca, and I got a different sponsor in Ithaca that worked the steps. As a matter of fact, I got him because I saw him helping somebody else with a fourth step. And we did it the way they do it in the big book. He said, take a tablet. He said, take a tablet, turn it on its side, draw 3 lines, make 4 columns. The one is, who you're resentful at, what they did, what it affected. And he said, leave the most room for the 4th column. And I had actually read the book. I said, there's only 3 columns. And he said, well, you didn't read 2 pages later, where there's a paragraph that says, referring to our list again, and paraphrasing, is putting on our minds entirely what the other person had done. We looked at how we contributed to the problem. So that's the 4th step with the guidance of a sponsor, which is the 5th step. And it was that 4th column that was essential, because for me that's where the learning started. Because I was able to pretty quickly identify the injustices that had been perpetrated upon me by individuals and organizations in the world. And I didn't know about how I contributed. And there were instances where I had simply repressed or ignored my own contributions, but there were actually very important aspects that I just didn't understand about my life. And writing out the referring to the list again, and seeing how in a relationship, yeah, they did that, but I did this. And I'm focused on how wrong they were and how basically what a victim I was. It really freed me up to start letting go of the resentments, and a lot of that was me taking ownership of myself and my life and my own behaviors. A very important one for me, which I find it important to continue to share, both for my sake and for the learning attached, was I was in a dysfunctional work situation. I referenced it a little bit earlier. But my father owned the business at that time that I worked for, and Dad and I always had a difficult and contentious relationship, and a lot of it had to do with him really not treating me well. But the fact was I was drinking alcoholically, and I was not perfect. But more importantly, I came to realize that I kept showing up at that workplace. Oh, by the way, when I was in rehab, this is great, that I'm like 4 or 5 days sober. I think I'm still in detox. And my counselor came up to me and said, "Chief, I need to talk to you." And he said, "Well, we got to talk about what you're going to do for work when you get out of here." I said, "Well, because I'm 4 or 5 days sober and I know everything." I said, "I thought we were supposed to be staying present and living one day at a time, and we weren't supposed to project." And he said, "Well, in your case, we'll make an exception." And basically, he told me I had a choice. He said, "You can either go back and work for your father, or you can live." But whoa, that was powerful. My dad happily came down to visit me once, and they got to see him firsthand, so they weren't thinking it was totally me and my denial. But when I did my 4th and 5th step, and I was clear on my resentments towards him, what happened when I looked at my part of it was not only had I been drunk at different times and missed work and done things, but I had a sense of entitlement that he owed me, that I had never been either willing or able to look at. And that was really humbling, and it was really important, and it resurfaces in life, and I think it's a human condition. I think it's a human condition that alcoholics drink over and drug over, but I didn't see it until after I did a 4th and 5th step, or while I was doing a 4th and 5th step. And the way I think about it now is that if I walk into a room and somebody punches me in the face, that's on them. They shouldn't do it. But if I keep walking back in that room and somebody punches me in the face, at some point it is incumbent upon me to stop walking back in that room. And I didn't get that part. Now, why did I keep walking back in that room? It's because I had a sense of entitlement, and damn it, he owed me. And damn it, if I could just communicate how competent and skillful and hardworking and all these things that I was, he would clearly have to see that I was right and he was wrong, and he would have to change and I would get what I wanted. Unfortunately, I don't get to change people. The only one I get to change is me. And I can tell you this story, and that's a long time ago now that I did that particular 4th and 5th step. And this is something that I still get to work on. I'm not particularly, that's not a big part of my life, the particulars involved in that instance. But it still is an aspect of my life that with my practice, both in AA and the Buddhist teachings, keeps circling back around. And I have to keep basically letting go of that attachment, and that attachment to my entitlement, attachment to what people owe me, attachment to wanting to be regarded as this, that, and the other. There are a whole slew of different levels of attachment of which I was unaware, and that occasionally like a new one surfaces, and you go, "Oh my God!" I thought they talk about peeling the onion. That is still true. So the 4th and 5th step for me was where a whole lot of really important learning started, and it continues. And I think that fits in really well with the first of the eightfold path, which is right view. And right view, it delineates into four different pieces: is understanding suffering, understanding its origins, its cessation, and understanding the way leading to cessation. So this is right view, and if you notice, it sounds very similar to the Four Noble Truths. So basically, the Four Noble Truths are incorporated into the first of the Eightfold Path. And so it's a circle. It's not linear. It's all attached to each other, and for for further study and contemplation over the next 30 or 40, 50 years for each of you, there's two levels of right view, and the first one is called the mundane right view, and the second is the supra, or superior mundane right view. And the first one has to do with issues in which we can really sort of plug away at. Leading a moral and ethical life, figuring out what self-honesty is and self-awareness is versus just cash register honesty like we talk about in the rooms. And that leads us to having, I think, more peace and comfort in this life. And if you happen to be a Buddhist, it also is going to ensure you having a better rebirth. The supra-mundane right view is seeing things on a level that is profound enough so that it's eventually going to lead you to enlightenment. That takes a few more days. So we're not going to dwell too deeply into that here, but it is certainly an appropriate part of the study right from now on through to whenever. But I don't want people to give up on the practice because it's so esoteric and it's like, okay, I got to dissolve into nothingness. It's actually like all the characters in the Matrix, and if I can't do that, I might as well not try. No, plug away at it, and plug away at the mundane, and that will lead you to where you want to go. Again, in the last paragraph of the first 164 pages of the big book, it says something to the effect that we will certainly meet some of you as we trudge the road of happy destiny. And this, to me, is saying, okay, we're going to trudge the road here. We're going to be on the path. We're going to stay on the path. And to me, this is where that part of it starts. And I haven't really talked a lot about karma yet. If you're speaking Pali, it's karma. They're from New York. The more common the more common word that we hear is karma. And you'll hear that difference between words quite often in the literature, depending on where they're translating from. And there's two aspects to karma. One is avoiding unwholesome actions, and the other is engaging in wholesome actions. And the whole idea of karma is the laws of nature. If we engage in unwholesome actions, bad stuff's going to happen. If we engage in wholesome actions, there's a higher probability that good stuff's going to happen. And so if you're reading Kevin Griffin's A Burning Desire, he would be talking about karma as a higher power, talking about the laws of nature in the quote that I gave you a little bit earlier. So I think that that's very apropos for those of us that have been in rooms for a while. Something that people say all the time is you're either headed towards a drink or away from a drink. That is like this concept of karma. If you're engaged in behaviors in which you shouldn't engage, you're heading, you're going to have a bad rebirth. Bad stuff's going to happen. If you're engaging in behaviors that are ethical and moral and fit in with your particular morality, you're going to be heading in a positive direction. You're going to be heading away from a drink, or you're going to be heading to a beneficial rebirth. And that's a very important and appropriate thing. Yeah?
The word wholesome.
Wholesome?
Yeah, it's kind of subjective. So are you saying that...
it's very subjective.
Are you saying that wholesome is defined by each person differently?
With the caveat, yes, but with the caveat that you are not hanging out in denial, that you're not rationalizing, that you're not deluded. So yes. But
well, if you're hanging out in denial, and you're in denial, how do you know?
That is an excellent, that's one of the reasons that the 12-step types continue to go to meetings.
Oh, okay.
Because,
I knew I was going to meetings for a reason.
It happens all the time. You walk into a meeting and you're feeling cranky and you don't know why, and then somebody starts talking about the fact that they stop praying and meditating. And you go, oh, me too. And that's why the Buddhists very strongly recommend that you be affiliated with a Sangha. And just the same way that the 12-steppers say, you know, you really ought, you need to be connected to people in the rooms, and you don't generally get sober by just reading the book.
Right.
And so it ties in. So your point's well taken, and the subjective nature of it, I think, is important. And in another quote that I read earlier, it spoke to doing this stuff without becoming critical or judgmental. And I think that's really an important piece of what we're talking about. Not just critical and judgmental of others, but of ourselves. So we've got both sides. You got the criticism, or unhelpful criticism and judgmentalness, and the other extreme is denial and delusion. And so what we want to do is actually basically do what the Buddhists talk about, which is seek the middle path. Basically in all things. It's a great question, though. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts? Okay. Then I actually would like to do another pretty guided meditation. And I don't think that I did this one last year. And this is a forgiveness meditation. Why I want to do a forgiveness meditation now versus at another time in this weekend is that I think that one of the aspects of the fourth and fifth step is that we sort of proceed into the fourth and fifth step. When we started out, in the book it says, you know, list all the people you're resentful at. And then it has the money issues and the sex issues. But an outcome that I think is hoped for all of us is to be able to live in a state of forgiveness rather than a state of resentfulness. Now, as I say that, I am not an advocate of putting yourself in harm's way. I'm not an advocate of being foolish and saying, oh, that wasn't a problem for somebody that beat you up or assaulted you sexually or mistreated you as a kid. So I think there's always a risk of misinterpreting that. But forgiveness really has to do with letting go of the bonds. You know, we're chained to anybody that's abused us. There are a lot of great stories in these books about, there's one in particular about two guys that had been held in a concentration camp during World War II, and they met at a reunion years later, and the first one asked the second, you know, have you forgiven the guards yet? And the second one said, no, I will never forgive them for what they have done. And then he says, ah, then you are still in prison. So we need to let go of our resentments, not to approve or condone someone's behavior, but so we're free of living in prison. And so one of the outcomes I would hope to have begin at the fourth and fifth step is to be able to start forgiving the people we need to forgive. It's been many years for me now, and I have not really totally let go of all the resentments that I had from earlier in my life, but I'm dramatically better. And just as a footnote, for some of those I've been able to forgive people for some things and not for others. And interestingly, I've been able to forgive them for things that happened to me, but not things that they did to other people, which is, you know, it's old stuff. So you just keep working on it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a forgiveness meditation, and I'm going to, yes, Steve?
I'm curious. I'm in a situation where I'm basically being victimized. Somebody thinks that all my property belongs to them. They're also under the impression they're entitled. I guess it happens to be my son.
Oh, this will be a good one. I think you ought to talk to me after the thing. This is going to be too long.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk to you, but that's big stuff. Okay? And you've already given me 6 different things that need to be addressed.
Okay.
Okay? But start out with this. And when matter of fact, I'm going to jump ahead to the 9th step. I think it's important to do 9 steps, but I always tell the people that I work with is do not do a 9th step until you are safe and you feel safe. Part of this is going to be true for you, we need to take care of ourselves, and we do a 9th step when we are safe, and not before that. Okay? Okay. So now, if you can all get in a position in which you're comfortable meditating, and we're going to do forgiveness meditation. And as soon as this person does whatever they're doing. Okay?
No. She still has to come out.
Okay, well, they're going to get a little forgiveness then. Because it's really bad when you get a resentment in the middle of a forgiveness meditation. So get in a position in which you're comfortable meditating. And then, whether you prefer to have your eyes closed or what I call half-mask, allow yourself to settle into that. And as you begin meditating, it's often helpful to let yourself know in thought that I'm about to start meditating, that I'm sitting in this posture, that I'm safe, and that I can deal with any distractions that may arise. And then we're going to begin a forgiveness meditation. I borrowed this from Jack Kornfield, and I think it's very helpful. And I'm going to read it just as he has it. To practice forgiveness meditation, let yourself sit comfortably, allowing your eyes to close and your breath to be natural and easy. Let your body and mind relax. Breathing gently into the area of your heart. Let yourself feel all the barriers you have erected and the emotion that you have carried because you have not forgiven yourself, not forgiven others. Let yourself feel the pain of keeping your heart closed. Then, breathing softly, begin asking and extending forgiveness, reciting the following words, letting the images and feelings that come up grow deeper as you repeat them. Forgiveness of others. There are many ways that I have hurt and harmed others, have betrayed or abandoned them, caused them suffering knowingly or unknowingly, out of my pain, fear, anger, and confusion. Let yourself remember and visualize the ways you have hurt others. See and feel the pain you have caused out of your own fear and confusion. Feel your own sorrow and regret. Sense that finally you can release this burden and ask for forgiveness. Picture each memory that still burdens your heart, and then to each person in your mind repeat, I ask for your forgiveness. I ask for your forgiveness. Take your time and visualize the people that you have hurt, knowingly and unknowingly. Many of the hurts that we have perpetrated were unknowing. Picture the memories that still burden your heart. And then to each person in your mind repeat, I ask your forgiveness. I ask your forgiveness. Forgiveness for yourself. There are many ways that I have hurt and harmed myself. I have betrayed or abandoned myself many times through thought, word, or deed, knowingly or unknowingly. Feel your own precious body and life. Feel the sorrow you have carried from this and sense that you can release these burdens. Extend forgiveness for each of them, one by one. Repeat to yourself, for the ways I have hurt myself through action or inaction, out of fear, pain, and confusion, I now extend a full and heartfelt forgiveness. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. Forgiveness for yourself. There are many ways that I have hurt and harmed myself. I have betrayed or abandoned myself many times through thought, word, or deed, knowingly or unknowingly. Feel your own precious body and life. Let yourself see the ways you have hurt or harmed yourself. Picture them. Remember them. Feel the sorrow you have carried from this and sense that you can release these burdens. Extend forgiveness for each of them, one by one. Repeat to yourself, for the ways I have hurt myself through action or inaction, out of fear, pain, and confusion, I now extend a full and heartfelt forgiveness. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. Forgiveness for those who have hurt or harmed you. There are many ways that I have been harmed by others, abused or abandoned, knowingly or unknowingly, in thought, word, or deed. Let yourself picture and remember these many ways. Feel the sorrow you have carried from this past and sense that you can release this burden of pain by extending forgiveness when your heart is ready. Now say to yourself, I now remember the many ways others have hurt or harmed me, wounded me out of fear, pain, confusion, and anger. I have carried this pain in my heart too long. To the extent that I am ready, I offer them forgiveness. To those who have caused me harm, I offer my forgiveness. I forgive you. Forgiveness of others. There are many ways that I have hurt and harmed others, have betrayed or abandoned them, caused them suffering knowingly or unknowingly, out of my pain, fear, anger, and confusion. Let yourself remember and visualize the ways you have hurt others. See and feel the pain you have caused out of your own fear and confusion. Feel your own sorrow and regret. Sense that finally you can release this burden and ask for forgiveness. Picture each memory that still burdens your heart. And then to each person in your mind repeat, I ask for forgiveness. I ask your forgiveness. Forgiveness for yourself. There are many ways that I have hurt and harmed myself. I have betrayed or abandoned myself many times through thought, word, or deed, knowingly or unknowingly. Feel your own precious body and life. Let yourself see the ways you have hurt or harmed yourself. Picture them, remember them. Feel the sorrow you have carried from this and the sense that you can release these burdens. Extend forgiveness for each of them, one by one. Repeat to yourself, for the ways I have hurt myself through action or inaction, out of fear, pain, and confusion, I now extend a full and heartfelt forgiveness. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. Forgiveness for those who have hurt or harmed you. There are many ways that I have been harmed by others, abused or abandoned, knowingly or unknowingly, in thought, word, or deed. Let yourself picture and remember these many ways. Feel the sorrow you have carried from this past and sense that you can release this burden of pain by extending forgiveness when your heart is ready. Now say to yourself, I now remember the many ways others have hurt or harmed me, wounded me out of fear, pain, confusion, and anger. I have carried this pain in my heart too long. To the extent that I am ready, I offer them forgiveness.
Sorry.
For those who have caused me harm, I offer my forgiveness. I forgive you. Let yourself gently repeat these three directions for forgiveness until you feel a release in your heart. For some great pains, you may not feel a release, but only the burden and the anguish or anger you have held. Touch this softly. Be forgiving of yourself for not being ready to let go and move on. Forgiveness cannot be forced. It cannot be artificial. Simply continue the practice and let the words and images work gradually in their own way. In time, you can make the forgiveness meditation a regular part of your life, letting go of the past and opening your heart to each new moment with a wise, loving kindness. I'm going to be quiet now. And we'll end the meditation with the bell in a little bit. What did you experience?
I'll share.
Okay.
I thought a lot of this was already gone, but some of it came back. And some of it, deep stuff, but some of it present stuff also. And as you talked through each one, I could feel the sorrow. I could feel the willingness to want to let go so that I could be free. So it was very powerful. Thank you.
Beautiful.
I'll share. Yeah, I felt the same way. It was like, still feel kind of nauseous just from the intensity of the emotions. Like, I felt, it was interesting to me that it took a little while to kind of remember specific things for people. But when they came up, it was very powerful, and so it kind of made me realize that I have all that stuff in my subconscious, and I just don't look at it. You know what I mean?
Right, yes.
But it's there.
Yes.
And it was like, wow, it's really all right there if I take a couple moments to focus on it. So, I don't know. I'm glad that at the end when you said how it's okay if you're still feeling the sorrow, but not forgiving, that's okay.
Yep.
And that it'll come in time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good.
Great.
Where I was at. So it was quite cool.
And what she just described, I think, is really what is in all of us. And it's one of the reasons that we continue. And the storm clouds eventually become little shadows. And sometimes they go away totally, sometimes we end up with a little shadow. Anybody else have anything? Yes?
I had a slightly different experience. Working through the program, I've done a lot of work around forgiveness, not just of others, but of myself, because I struggled with not being able to love myself, and one of the things that I had to do was to be able to forgive myself to get to that point. So today for me, as I was going through this, I actually felt really good about the fact that I didn't have a lot there. Now, it doesn't mean that I could do this on a separate day and something could come back to me, but today I just felt like I was in a really good place, which just kind of helped me reinforce that, working these steps and working on myself has been totally worth, all the anguish and the pain we have to go through to kind of get through those situations that caused us to suffer and stuff. So today I'm obviously in a good place.
Wonderful. Thanks.
I was going to share that. So recently, my mother's in recovery. She's been in AA for many years, and she asked me recently if my 12-year-old had her period, and she does. And we talked about it because my 12-year-old was able to come to me and share that with me. And when I was 12, I wanted nothing to do with my mother, and she shared that when she was 12, she had wanted nothing to do with her mother. And we talked, my mother and I talked, and she asked for my forgiveness, and I asked for her forgiveness for my difficulty. I was a very tough 12-year-old. And it was very beautiful, and that just happened on Thursday. And so this was a really, really nice to be able to visualize her and say, I forgive you. And it was just very beautiful closure on something that's still with me. So we just spent a couple of days, and so it was very beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes?
I felt, as I was getting calmer, that I could identify much better my part in it. And it was almost like I was taking my soul and trying to clean it up the best I could. Not all the way, but somewhat. So it's a very good feeling. I have gotten a lot out of this so far, and I'm
Great.
so grateful, because I had no clue that this entitlement issue was such a big part of me. My resentments were because I was entitled. I'm not entitled. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just ended up feeling really sad at the end, so which is fine, but sometimes it feels like I need to spend my whole life meditating in order to really, get to the bottom of some of this stuff or to get relief from it. And I'm just kind of wondering, I've been reading and they're introducing different types of meditation. I've been reading about, 20 different types of meditation recently. I feel like, how do I incorporate all these different things into my life with just a limited amount of time that I have to spend on it? I'm just wondering if you had any suggestions about kind of knowing what you need at a certain time, what type of meditation to do in the day, or how to break up is that just trying different stuff, or?
What comes to my mind is actually an old AA saying, which is, don't get too holy by Thursday. Give yourself permission to be as imperfect and as unfinished as you are at any given time. And keep moving back towards the center. It's a very powerful thing to move from resentment to sadness. And sadness is a much more foundational feeling. And what I would suggest, they say that samatha meditation helps you relax and vipassana helps you achieve enlightenment. So I would be doing the samatha meditation on a regular basis to get okay. And then on a less regular basis, I would be doing the forgiveness meditations, and later in the day we're going to do a metta meditation. And part of the metta meditation I find very difficult. And the metta meditation is called the loving kindness meditation. So the big thing I would be doing is keep getting back to today and to the center, and then sort of reaching out and growing in the context of my life, rather than in the context of somebody else's life. Not everybody can do 3-month retreats and immerse themselves and try and do the total cleanse. And most people that do are trying to achieve enlightenment, and just by the fact that they're trying to do that, they're not likely to accomplish it. So it's like, don't worry about it. So I don't know if that's helpful, but mostly get back to center, and over the next 30 or 40 years, you can accomplish the rest. Okay.
If not, that's all right.
Yeah, then you get to come back. I mean, it's fine. And you'll have an auspicious rebirth. And well, actually, it's one of the things that they talk about. Why one of the fundamental reasons that we keep being reborn is because we're craving more life, rather than we haven't cleaned something up or this and that. And that is part of the most profound letting go. Is letting go of that last little bit of noticing that we're separate and different. And so, 400 or 500 lives will be good. Ron?
Something I've found over the course of time that I've been doing this is with the forgiveness and with the growth, is that you find some ingrained things that came to you as you were born and you grew through life. Things that were set before you that you came to accept as standards of living, that you needed to do. And then somewhere along the line you picked up this big stick that's the I am Ron stick. And it says that if I do this, this, and this, and I do this, this, and this, I'm going to get an attaboy, I'm going to get a citation, I'm going to get a plaque on the wall, I'm going to get pats on the back and everything else. And somewhere along the line in this, you take that stick and you throw it away. Because what's been ingrained in you by society and everything else that made you successful, from my learnings, have been a lie. Because I sat there at 35, 36 years old, I had the house, I had the wife, I had the 2.2 kids, I had the 3.2 cars, I had 2 dogs, a cat, a white picket fence, green grass. And if I walked outside the house and went out on that porch, I want to kill myself. So everything that society has built me up that said this is what I'll be, this is what you'll be, and you'll get this big platter and this big kiss on the cheek if you're successful, is a whole bunch of minutia. And through this stuff that we do with prayer and meditation and forgiveness, the biggest thing I've had to do was forgive myself for believing all that shit when I was growing up. That somebody else led me astray, and that I bought into it. So it's there, but it's not something you get in 3 months or 3 days or 3 weeks. It comes from continual doing what we're doing here this week. Keep up the good work.
Okay, that's probably a good place to call a break.